to the Minnesota Department of Education's Physical Education Standard Implementation video series. I'm Mary Thyssen-Milder, and I serve as the Physical Education Specialist at the department. The 2018 Minnesota Academic Standards in Physical Education were developed by physical educators from across the state. The Minnesota Department of Education facilitated that process and then formed a Physical Education Standards Implementation Leadership Team made up of the co-chairs of the MDE Physical Education Standard Development Team, executive board members of the Minnesota Society of Health and Physical Education, or MINSHAPE, leaders in adaptive physical education representing MINDAPE, and representatives of higher education. Their role is to assist MDE in designing a standard implementation professional development plan. The leadership team designed a 3-year assistance plan to support Minnesota physical educators as they plan for implementation of the standards in the 2021 to 22 school year. In 2019, we were in the middle of the second year of professional development when the COVID-19 pandemic hit, and that put a dramatic pause on the training plan. The COVID-19 pandemic delayed the implementation of the 2018 academic standards in physical education until the 2023 to 24 school year. To assist teachers in reviewing the topics covered in the first year of standard implementation trainings, a SNAPSHOTS video series was created that addressed the importance of standards, introduced the new Minnesota physical education standards, and broke the standards down one by one. Videos on academic language, learning progressions, deconstructing benchmarks, and bundling benchmarks were also included. These videos can be found on the MDE or MINSHAPE websites. A teacher may watch them in order or go directly to the desired topic and can be viewed individually or in teacher teams. This video is produced as part of the continuation of the second year of standard implementation training. Every second Thursday of the month between February and June of 2022, a new video will be released that focuses on the content identified for the second year of training. The Snapshot series was released in February of 2022. The focus of this video is best practices in physical education assessment with a release date of March 2022. Because physical educators are well-grounded in assessment basics, this video provides a very brief description of the purposes, types, and categories of assessments and addresses a few common roadblocks teachers encounter in assessing students. The major focus of this video is to address national best practices and how they can be integrated into daily assessment practices. Sample assessments from both the national and state levels are shared, and the presentation concludes with practical tips in assessment planning. This video is grounded in standards-based assessment. It doesn't matter how well students perform in comparison with others because standards are criterion referenced based on a set standard rather than norm referenced based on comparisons of one's performance with those of a certain population. The purpose of assessment is to provide evidence of student learning and student achievement towards outcomes and standards. Teachers can use them to plan for future instruction, provide feedback to students, formalize the observation process, and document program effectiveness. Before the development of standards, there were inconsistencies in physical education programs. Some physical education teachers selected units they enjoyed teaching and gave little thought to teaching activities about which they had little expertise or experience. Assessment practices may have focused mainly on dress, participation, and observation. In standards-based assessment, teachers select a goal or target that helps students meet one or more standard. The targeted standards and grade level benchmarks are precisely defined and an appropriate course of study is chosen. The appropriate assessment is determined, the activity is selected, and students practice continuous assessment and instruction to reach the goal or target. Assessments fall into categories according to their intent. Informal assessments are a way to gather information in an authentic setting using non-standardized instruments. These are in-process measures based upon specific assignments or tasks that allow students to demonstrate their competency. The goal of informal assessment is to collect information in real time that allows improvement in student learning as well as instruction. They are usually criterion referenced, which means students are assessed on achieving the outcome of the standard. Examples include assessments such as checks for understanding, rubrics, checklists, rating scales, portfolios, projects, tests, quizzes, and pre-assessments. Formal assessments are standardized measures of selected outcomes with predetermined criteria. These measures follow a particular testing protocol, assign a score or a grade to a student, and have data supporting the conclusions made from the test. Data from formal assessments are computerized and summarized mathematically. The most common formal assessment in physical education is FitnessGram from the Cooper Institute. There are 3 types of assessment. Formative assessments are ongoing during instruction, allowing teachers to track student progress and adapt student outcomes accordingly. They can be formal or informal assessments occurring during the learning process. Summative assessments occur at the close of a unit of instructional sequence, providing teachers with a comprehensive summary of each student's progress and growth. They are used to evaluate student learning at the end of an instructional unit against a standard or a benchmark. In authentic assessment, students are asked to perform a real-world task or in the environment that is closest to real-world experiences, such as 3-on-3 gameplay rather than a practice task. Assessment in physical education comes with a unique set of challenges. Often, teachers may interact with hundreds of students in a week or even sometimes daily. That makes collecting, analyzing, and tracking assessment data a demanding and challenging task. There may not be agreement among colleagues on what and how to assess within units. There also may be a general discomfort in how to appropriately address the affective domain. Finally, although observation can be a credible assessment tool in physical education, it is not effective unless teachers can provide written observation or documentation. No matter the challenges, standards-based learning requires continued assessment. Advances in software and technology have made assessing, collecting data, and tracking student progress easier and more doable than ever before. Shape America's instructional practice guidelines identify physical education best practices in 5 areas: the learning environment, instructional strategies, curriculum, assessment, and professionalism. This slide identifies best practices, or what Shape identifies as appropriate and inappropriate practices in assessment in physical education. It is best practice for formative and summative assessments to be ongoing and integral parts of the learning process for all students, including those with disabilities. Teachers should systematically assess the cognitive, affective, and physical domains using a variety of assessment techniques. And assessment should include clearly defined criteria that articulate to students as part of instruction before assessment. For example, a rubric is provided and explained during instruction. Continuing our best practices discussion, teachers should encourage students to avoid comparison with others and instead use results as a catalyst for personal improvement. If fitness testing is done, the results should be shared privately with children and their parents or guardians and used as a tool for developing personal goals and strategies for maintaining increasing the respective fitness parameters. Students should not compare their test scores with each other, nor should their results be posted publicly. Teachers should provide regular reports of student progress to students and parents or guardians using a variety of continuous formative assessments, for example, heart rate monitor printouts or pedometer step sheets. An assessment provides an opportunity to provide detailed feedback to students. Here's an example of why those details are important. A teacher wants to assess Minnesota benchmark 1.1.3.1. A student will be able to roll and throw underhand, demonstrating 2 of the 5 critical elements of the maturing pattern. The teacher's clipboard has an X next to David's name to designate he cannot meet this benchmark. What does the X tell us? Simply that he does not meet the benchmark. But what doesn't it tell us? Can he perform any of the critical elements? Which ones can he do and which can't he do? Considering this, what kind of assessment would help? A checklist of each of the critical elements could provide more detailed information. Once this checklist is created, the teacher can continue the same practice of checking off each element as the student demonstrates them. The checklist can be a simple check, or a teacher can also add notes to share with the student regarding his or her progress. By law, Minnesota school districts are required to develop their own assessments designed to meet current benchmarks. The checklist on the previous slide is from a collection of sample assessments that legislation required MDE to produce. In order to create the sample assessments, MDE utilized PE metrics from Shape America as a guide. PE metrics aligns with the National Physical Education Standards and provides sample assessments for measuring student performance against the grade level outcomes at the elementary, middle, and high school levels. Both PE metrics and the Minnesota sample assessments provide a way of thinking about assessment in physical education. They are both collections of sample assessments with criteria and are aligned to specific grade level outcomes and benchmarks. They reflect pragmatic approaches to assessment in physical education and are designed to be adaptable. PE metrics and sample assessments do not provide a prescription for assessment in physical education. They are not a collection of exemplars because all samples can be modified. Neither provide assessments for every grade level outcome or benchmark and are not validated instruments with established content validity. In designing the sample assessments, Minnesota followed a similar format from PE metrics. The first step is to identify the standard, focus area, and benchmark, and then identify the assessment task. For example, it could be a checklist, exit slip, short answer, or performance rubric. Guidelines in the assessments stipulate that teachers can utilize the assessments as they are, or they can be modified to meet the teacher's needs. The assessments often include general teaching expectations before assessment and identify any necessary definitions, critical elements, or equipment needed, and provide suggested space setup. The last piece is the assessment directions and a sample scoring guide. The following slides identify various informal assessments, with some providing PE examples from the PE metrics or the Minnesota sample assessments. Pre-assessments can be used to determine the starting points for instruction, determine group or partner assignments, provide information for differentiated instruction to assess students' needs, and assess the impact on student learning. They can be used for pre-assessment of a student's knowledge base through quizzes or questionnaires. Surveys of previous experiences can be helpful as well and can be used to get baseline behaviors at the beginning of a unit and again at the end of the unit to see if behaviors have changed. Pre-assessment on skill and performance can be used to establish a baseline performance level and allow for differentiated instruction based on skill level and can result in modified practice tasks, equipment, and gameplay. Checks for understanding are just that. How well are the students understanding the teacher? How well are they understanding what they have to do? And how well do they understand the concept just introduced? A quick example would be to say, thumbs up if you understand the task, thumbs sideways for so-so understanding, and thumbs down for I am completely lost. Checks for understanding provide the teacher immediate feedback to progress to the next task, reteach, and provide more practice. Checks for understanding may be quick, such as thumbs up, or show me, or tell your neighbor, or maybe longer with reflection, analysis of learning, summarizing, or asking for unanswered questions or concerns. The exit slip should be related to the outcome identified at the grade level and provide specific feedback to students' understanding of the concept, strategy, or skill identified in the grade level outcome. The exit slip should allow students to provide feedback quickly and easily. It should only take from 1 to 4 minutes for students to complete. In addition, the exit slip should allow teachers to quickly and easily gather information needed. Here is a Minnesota sample assessment for an exit slip for benchmark 0.3.3.1. A student will recognize that faster movement corresponds to faster heartbeat and breathing. The guidelines provide instruction that should occur prior to the students filling out the exit slip. Since this is a kindergarten class, students can easily circle the picture of the activity in each row where their hearts would beat faster. Then on the back, they could draw another picture of an activity they do that makes their heart beat faster. Checklists can be extremely useful for physical education teachers as well as students. Checklists are exactly what they sound like, a list that you check if students have done all parts of a skill or task. They are easy to design and easy to use. A simple yes or no can provide some relevant information. If teachers want to add different levels, then that would be a rating scale. Checklists are not meant to evaluate the quality of performance. That is more specific to rating scales or rubrics. Checklists are a great way students can offer peer feedback during physical education. Are the students performing all the steps of the skill or using the correct body parts? Are the students including everything needed in their portfolios? Here's a Minnesota sample assessment for checklist for benchmark 6.1.1.1. A student will demonstrate correct rhythm and pattern for one of the following dance forms: folk, social, creative, line, or world dance. The guidelines describe that a pattern used in a rhythm or dance unit is the sequence of movement, for example, 4 repeating 8-count phrases, and that rhythm is the time spent between 2 movements that repeat itself within a familiar pattern. The directions for teachers are to make a tally mark under the rhythm and pattern column each time the student demonstrates incorrect rhythm and pattern during the selected dance form. Students must score 2 or fewer errors in each component to achieve this benchmark. Here is a sample peer checklist regarding personal and social responsibility from Shape America for benchmark 9.4.2.1. A student will exhibit proper etiquette, respect for others, and teamwork while engaging in physical activity. Rubrics are utilized to assess a student's performance while performing a skill or to assess the product that is the result of student work. Rubrics use a coherent set of criteria to assess student performance or skill. They describe levels of performance quality across 3, 4, or 5 levels. They provide specific corrective feedback to students based on specific criteria for each component of a skill or assignment, specific criteria of performance at each level, and allows a teacher to assess all components of a skill or assignment using one assessment. PE Metrics utilizes a 3-level rubric that allows for quick assessments. The levels are developing, competent, and proficient. Students are identified in the developing stage when they haven't yet met the level of competency. Identifying students that are in the developing stage assists teachers in noting which students may need adaptations or more time. Students that meet the criteria identified are in the competency stage, and students whose skill levels pass the competency level are at the proficient level. Here's an example of a 3-level rubric for an overarm throw from PE Metrics. At the lowest level, or the developing stage, a teacher can identify performance errors common to the skill. For example, the same sidestep is a common performance error for the overarm throw. Using a rubric, a teacher does not simply identify the negative, meaning that the student does not step in opposition, but the teacher identifies what they see in the place of the step for opposition. The lowest level should not be a list of all things a student didn't do, but identify a thing student does in the place of the correct criteria. Since physical education is a performance-based discipline, teachers rely on observation skills to complete many assessments. The first step is to identify critical elements to be assessed. Teachers may use checklists or rubrics as observation tools. Often teachers have large class sizes, so it's important to create compact or electronic checklists or rubric sheets. PE Metrics advises when teachers are moving around the gym or space to identify the students with performance errors first, then identify the ones with mature and highly efficient patterns. Teachers can assume all the other students are at the competency level. It's best to perform direct observation in an authentic environment. Skill patterns are more true when they are observed during practice tasks or modified games. Assess and reassess as often as possible. Here are some practical tips for assessments. Do assess selectively, select specific classes to assess, and select specific outcomes to assess. Spread assessment and assignments over time. Use group projects and vary assessment due dates. Use a variety of assessments. As a teacher, don't attempt to assess every class on the same day or assess every outcome. Don't have an assessment day. Assessments should be completed over time and be continuous and ongoing. Do not bury yourself by having all assignments due on the same day. Complete common assessments at different times during the semester for different classes and keep data on spreadsheets to facilitate analysis. Use technology to track student progress and performance, analyze and interpret results, and for data storage. Use technology for student submission of assignments, such as students self-tracking levels of activity, participation, fitness, and students writing reflections, blogs, or exit slips. Teachers can teach the use of technology for critiquing various apps, fitness sites, and information on the web, as well as discuss the ethical use of technology. All assessments for physical education programs should align with grade level benchmarks and be appropriate for the teaching environment, including space, number of students, availability of time and equipment, and must meet the needs of your students. To develop an assessment plan, inventory current assessments used in the program. Evaluate strengths and weaknesses of current assessments. Identify the type of assessments currently in place and determine any assessment gaps. Review sample assessments from sources such as PE Metrics, Minnesota Sample Assessments, and other credible resources. Don't reinvent the wheel. Modify assessments from other sources and create a catalog of possible assessments. Develop system-wide assessments. By evaluating each stage of an assignment, a teacher can identify students' misconceptions and mistakes early, allowing for corrections to be made. It also spreads assessment over time, so teachers are not overwhelmed at the end of the semester with the volume of complex assignments to be assessed. Thank you for viewing this video on best practices in assessment in physical education. Special thanks to the members of the MDE Physical Education Standards Implementation Team for the development of the content and for their continued guidance in supporting quality physical education in Minnesota. A reminder that the foundational videos on standard implementations are covered in the SNAPSHOTS Physical Education Standards video series that can be found on the MinShapes and MDE websites. Look for the next video in April of 2022 to explore the next step after bundling benchmarks, how to write performance outcomes in physical education. Thank you.